members are, see if any of the committee members are on the attendee side.
Good idea. There he is.
We're just waiting for Director Paul. And Stephanie, is Dave going to be joining us?
He'd better be joining us because I think he was doing the staff report for.
Right.
Hey, George.
Hi.
Hey, George, was it fabulous?
What was fabulous?
Was your tour fabulous?
Oh my goodness, yeah, the storage facility. It's the largest in the world.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it will be by the end of this year. They're almost doubling its capacity in the next 6 months.
That's really neat.
I don't know what that means. So many megahertz of such and such power.
Are they using existing facility infrastructure? They have to build a lot more, or what?
No, but basically they're using the infrastructure to get onto the grid, which that power plant always had that infrastructure. So they're using that infrastructure. Mainly they're just using floor space. These batteries weigh a lot of poundage, and they're concrete floors and structures that were already in place. And it's just row after row after row, hundreds and hundreds of feet of battery package. You can't see much because they're all in some container, and each container has about, 10, 20, 30, 40 batteries in each one.
Wow.
And each battery is about, I don't know, 1.5 feet by 6 inches by, I don't know, some big dimension.
Sounds like a high explosion possibility if something went wrong.
They say, yeah, we were walking through an area that had been closed down because they're doing maintenance on a number of the what's called core units. But they said when it's fully running, it sounds like you're in a beehive. It's just bzzz,
Oh boy.
Well,
Wow.
that's great because we haven't had that capacity here.
Well, and Tesla also has a small unit, small by their comparison, right adjacent to them. It uses a little different technology in some points. I didn't understand the difference. But they have like 150 kind of whatever megahertz capacity, and Vestra has it's about 700 megahertz capacity. So it's like 4 times bigger than the Tesla unit.
Wow.
And I think Dave has joined us by phone.
Well, yeah, thanks for allowing me to enjoy myself at that tour.
Glad you did.
Oh, no, it's very glad we were able to.
It's a strange thing to visit because you really can't see much. Everything's behind these containers. We didn't even hear the bee sound. Bzz, I kind of wanted to hear that.
So is it operating now? Is it on?
Oh, yes. It's been operating. Vestra is on the NASDAQ, stock option.
Yeah.
They were asking, he said, the stocks, stocks go like this and this. Somebody else was whispering in my ear, the stock has been going like this. So,
But that means it has room to go up and make some money.
yeah, it's still a little bit of a risky adventure.
Chair Riley, would you like to call the meeting to order?
Yes, I would. So let's see, we have a quorum. So let's call the meeting of the Public Outreach Committee to order on April 14th at 1:30. We have a quorum present with myself and Amy and Karen Paul. So let's go to the comments from you said there are no written comments, Joelle, is there?
That's correct. Yeah, so this portion of the agenda is for any member of the public who wishes to make public comment on any item within the district's jurisdiction and not listed on today's agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Chair Riley, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the committee.
Okay, and I'm gonna, even though this is the first meeting of this new committee, any member of the public that wants to say something, I just ask that you raise your hand when you feel the urge to speak. We will try to call on you. I just hate going about each time back and forth and saying, is there anybody, anybody? Just you take it upon yourself. If you'd have a comment to make, you raise your hand so we can recognize you. Thank you. Okay, so action items.
I like that way of doing things. I think I may follow your example.
Well, we are a committee, so that may or may not work in the full board. I don't know. Anyway, just for efficiency purposes, I like to do that. So action item number 1 is adoption of the October 25th committee meeting minutes. Is there any comments from the committee or questions?
I have one. It's not a correction, I think, but as that meeting was quite a long time ago, and I would just like to find out what we can about the status of a couple of the basically the projects that were discussed at that last meeting that are in the minutes, and that would be item 3, which was the email lists, and 4 was about postcards to the hospitality industry. And I just, if we could take a moment before or after we vote on adopting the minutes, just to get an update on that, that would be.
What I'd like to do, Karen, is just go through the action items for the adoption of whatever, and then hold these questions until item 4 when we get to the guidance discussion. And we can get an update as well as see where we might go. Does that work okay?
Sure.
Oh,
I have the
okay.
exact same.
Yeah,
question.
and I think drought messaging will cover one of those 2 things that you brought up, and then the guidance item 4 will pick up the other one. So yeah, that'll work.
And I have some questions too along the same lines that Karen mentioned.
Okay.
So I would, if there are any comments or corrections or so on to the minutes of that meeting,
And
I'll
move to adopt.
entertain a motion to accept.
I did.
I'm sorry, didn't I miss it? Amy moved?
Amy moved to adopt. I
Adopt.
second.
Yeah, okay, moved and seconded. Any other comments from the board? Okay, and no hands. I'm going to assume the public's going to volunteer their hands when time comes. Okay, call a roll, please, Joelle.
Committee member Paul,
Yes.
committee member Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Riley.
Yes.
The motion passes on a vote of 3-0.
Okay, thank you. And item number 2 is the committee meeting schedule. This has been out now for a little bit, so I've had a chance to look at it. I think there was only one change late in the year, but otherwise, this is the pattern we're on, and this seems like it's going to work. So if there are no comments on that, I'll also accept a motion to recognize a motion to approve.
I
Chair
have a
Riley.
comment.
Stephanie has a comment.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, Stephanie.
I just want to kind of just let you guys know that December 15th date may end up being our staff Christmas holiday luncheon. And so if it does, we'll probably need to change the date on that, assuming we can get back in person for our holiday celebration. That usually is the time that we would be doing it.
So maybe the committee can go to that as well, and it wouldn't be a quorum, so it wouldn't be a violation.
That might work.
Okay, and that's down the road, so we can sort that out as we get closer. Okay, I think it was moved and seconded to adopt the schedule. Call the roll again, please, Joelle.
Committee member Paul,
Yes.
committee member Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Riley.
Yes,
The motion passes.
I can't speak right now. Okay, my other phone was ringing, so that was the noise in the background. Okay, next action item, recommendation for adoption of the annual report. Let's have a little discussion of that report if we can.
Yep, so you can see it as an attachment. Joelle did a yeoman's job in editing and bringing in some newer photos. This is the format or style that we've been in probably the last 7 or 8 years. We have a requirement in our legislation to have an annual report. Within that requirement is to report annually on whether or not we have any groundwater charges, which is why you see this odd footnote at the very last page about groundwater charges. But nevertheless, this is very representative of what we've been doing. It's kind of a laundry list of accomplishments for the year, and some things, well, everything changes, but the topics have been kind of typical or similar year in and year out these last several years. I think it looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. We print up about 100 of them and have them available in our lobby. I've seen people read them and I've seen people take them home. We'll also send it to our current email list, which we're going to talk about our email lists and MailChimp and other things in item 5. But anyway, it's there for you. If you have editorial changes or specific questions, we can incorporate those before it goes to the board for approval. And that's why it's here in front of you today.
Just one other question, Dave, if on the email list, what's the size of that list approximately?
Oh, I had that number. Steph, do you still have that number?
Somewhere, yes.
Well, ballpark would serve my purpose.
It's not that big.
No, a couple hundred.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Karen, you had a comment?
I have a question and a few comments. And the question number one is, well, I understand that this annual report is required and it's also required to basically present it in a public hearing. Who in your mind is the intended audience or audiences?
It's a great question, because we've gone through, several different iterations in 40 years. Some physical printed versions, multiple pages. Then we got down to maybe a page front and back. What we had proposed and what we'd like to do, that once we did the analysis, it was too cost prohibitive, but we wanted to do an annual report to the public, kind of like what TAMSI does and a couple others do. We don't have the budget for that. We figured out that we don't have the budget for that. At some point, and again, as we talk about future public outreach. So the true audience is our legislation and checking the box that we've actually done it. And then we decided, well, how do we make it at least useful for that purpose, which is why it's in kind of the perfunctory bullet point format with, short blurbs that are digestible. But yeah, it's the format is simply to meet a statutory requirement,
Yeah.
and then make the best of it.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I was imagining that's the case, and I was sort of thinking along the same lines. And since it's a requirement, and it's a requirement that basically to present to the public, that we could make it more useful. I think we can make it more useful, and this is how. In my, it is. I agree with you that it's pretty good, but it does kind of the overall take is, we're doing this because it's required, it's required, and we did our job last year. These are the things we did, that's kind of the way it reads. And it's mostly pretty clear and well written for the most part, although there are a few spots where I find it a little bit jargony and technical. And I am happy to propose some edits it's been a crusade of my life to translate jargon into plain English, legal writing and technical writing. So I'm happy. I have edits written down on hard copy, and I'm happy to send them to you after the meeting in Word form.
So you don't think it's just as clear to say a groundwater surface water model, that instead we have to say a groundwater surface water GS flow / mod flow model? You don't think that adds value?
That actually is the first paragraph that hit me as in need of a little bit of rewriting. Yes, just to make it more readable, more easily readable. That's all.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So some of my edits are of that nature, and I can send them proposed edits later.
Yeah.
I have a couple of specific questions. One is that on the second page, the confirmation of exemptions from the water distribution system, and that's something I don't know about. So what enables us to exempt to do these exemptions from the permitting.
It's when they're not in the alluvial aquifer or in the seaside groundwater basin.
Okay.
Where are you, Karen? Which paragraph?
that-
Under well permitting.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I had a question there too.
Yeah, there's another place where I'd rewrite a little is the future financing methods, that paragraph, which is on, I think, the fourth page. I would just edit that a little bit to make it, again, just easier to read. That's all. It's not really substantive, and I can offer to do that. But maybe, oh yeah. And water supply, that very last paragraph on water supply, bottom of the last page. We can frame that, there's the mention of the desal plant and Pure Water Monterey. I think, we can reword that in a way that is, I guess, more helpful to us. And I have a notion of how to do it, and I would, send those edits too. I mean, for example, we could say, instead of we can say right out that CalAm has been unable to obtain a coastal permit for the desal plant. I mean, may as well use this. If this is something we can offer to, say, a journalist who needs basic information about what the water district is and what it does, or people are looking for, make it, just to make our narrative on what the water supply situation history is when we discuss it just a little bit clearer and more compelling. So that would be my goal, to do a little more editing for plain English and less jargony and easier to read, and to make it a little more interesting and compelling, make our narrative on this. I mean, I know it's not a PR piece. I know it's an annual report and it needs to, be stated a certain way, but I still think we can make it more useful for the district and kind of showcase what the district does in a brighter light. Oh, Dave, you're muted.
You're muted, Dave.
Do you have edits ready to go, or is that something you want to spend time and then get back to us?
Right now, I have some edits scribbled in hard copy, so I need a little bit of time just to put them in Word format in tracking, and then I can send them to Stephanie, to you, and to the committee members.
Yeah, actually, Joelle will be the one. So Joelle,
Okay.
I know you're on
Joelle.
mute, but you're trying to get a packet out to the board for Monday. I suppose
I could do it, send it to you in a couple hours after that.
Oh yeah, that'll work. Right, Joelle?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
I have a
Sure.
couple too, then I can do the same thing. They might be
Yep.
different thoughts.
Yep, that'd be good.
I have a couple too, and I'm not going to do it.
Well,
But I do.
Amy and Karen got yours. Yeah,
But I do want to discuss some of the principles that we're discussing right now, not so much directly related to this report, but how do we trigger to a little broader view of what we're trying to do? Should we just, I mean, I'm asking you, Dave or Stephanie, should we kind of expedite this one at this time and then discuss how do we go forward in the future and not try to use this particular document as a transfer document, a transition document?
Yep. I think if we want to have an annual report that is intended to be a spokes piece for the district, we need to reformat. We need the right paper. We need the right look and feel. We need
More photos, more
photos, more blurbs, more side columns, the readability. It needs to read more like things you've seen out there before. Short and easy in some places, more in depth. there's only, typically a couple of longer columns that people are willing to spend time on, and then everything else needs to be short. And that's why we need an outreach person to do this, because, this is staff, this is cobbled together and then pulled together by, our print shop is Joelle. And
our editor and our,
well, the editor is, I guess I'm the final editor, but actually Joel's probably the final editor because he'll find things. But yeah, it's farmed out to the divisions, and then they update their pieces, and then I look for things that make no sense or that miss the boat, and then Joel pulls it all together. And yeah, it's not at all the piece that represents the district. And when we get to that item, we want to go back to 2 newsletters a year, and we could easily have a single annual report. I don't think budget is so much an issue anymore. It was for quite a while, when the district was penny pitching because they were worried about its user fee and other things. I think we've got the luxury. That the real issue is mail, is direct mail is prohibitively expensive, somewhat ineffective because of at least the number of PO boxes that people have and the recycle bins right near them.
Right.
It's not the way it used to be, where everybody got mail and was happy to see, hey, I got something. What is this? Now it's, we're really quick to decide. But I've seen, like Tamsi, just as an example, gosh, one year they came in and it was like a pop-up. You remember those things as a kid that you could open up, and then if you attach all the tabs correctly, it actually built something out of cardboard or out of paper.
Three-dimensional, yeah.
Three-dimensional. Well, that was Tamsi like 2-3 years ago, and we're like, how much did you spend on this? But it was cool. I mean, it was honestly pretty interesting. And Stephanie, I talked a little bit about this earlier today. Even if we either acquire CalAm and become a 90-person agency where outreach becomes even more paramount. But even if we don't, and we remain a 25 to 30 person agency, we can elect to choose outreach as an important function of our regulatory existence. We can do a better job. And so I think either way, whoever we end up being down the road, I think we might want to focus on doing a better job of messaging and communicating. There's a little piece of, what's our relationship with the Public Utilities Commission and ratepayer advocacy that we haven't done in the past that we might want to do more of in the future. And so the role of the district in communications could be changed, could be shifted a little bit. So anyway, this will
I would
probably
support,
fade out.
I really support that, doing that. I think this would be a very good thing for the district to do. If we can,
Yeah.
if we have the resources.
I think this is a really good piece in that this would blow a lot of people's minds about how much the district does. The number of activities, I think people are really unaware of it. So in that regard, it's quite impressive. I'm not talking about the format, but the information, the accomplishments. And, one of the pieces that I get, I don't know how often they are, twice a year or something, from the 2 that are local are the COD newsletters and the ones from Waste Management.
Yep.
They're really very good. And I don't know if you could, if something like this, if it were divided into, like 3 pieces, so that it doesn't require quite as much reading at a time, that you could notify people 3 times a year, here's what we do here. And each time it's kind of a little bit different. Maybe once, if we ever get a big list of emails, that we could do that. But I am guessing that a huge percentage of people don't know that the district does all this. And I
Yeah.
think that people are very interested in water, so they might not just throw it into the circular bin. They might read it.
Yeah, and a little bit, so you both touched on a similar theme with a different purpose, and that's, a lot of this is just identifying what it is we do, and we did it. We're saying,
Yeah.
here's our job, and we executed our job, which is kind of Karen's point earlier. But to Amy's point is, a lot of people don't know that that's what we do, that we're providing these kind of services, and that we do outreach, and we do permitting, and that there's actual stuff there that,
Lots.
yeah. And so even though some of it can be a little boring, just having it all laid out there is a value to us as the district, just demonstrating that we're out doing things. You may not see us all the time.
It's definitely a value to us, and I mean, I learn things that we do from every time, and this is the third or fourth time I've read one of these. But of course, if we were to prepare a version of this for the public which actually we did, there was a one-page ad that appeared last year that listed a bunch of things, and that the district does, and that I thought was pretty good. But somebody I know said to me that there are a couple of things they didn't understand in that list, so we can improve it even a little bit. There was one specific thing I just don't want to lose sight of, and that is in the Measure J paragraph at the very end. We need to update. It says that the LAFCO decision will be challenged, and we just need to update that because we have challenged it.
Sure.
I'll include that with the suggested edits.
Yeah, good point.
Well, and also when you talk about getting people's attention until we have those emails, when we put an ad in the paper, we could say, you want to know what we're doing? Go to the website. We have a new, newsletter or something, just any way that we can do some kind of outreach if people are interested. And I think now people are real interested in the water situation. So
Yes. And to
Yeah, and
Dave's point,
we can even do that as a, almost a footer on our next 2 to 3 monthly branding ads.
Mhm.
Just, unrelated to the message in the branding ad, district annual report available, and with the URL or something like that, because it's going to find its way to a spot on our website. So we can just,
Yeah.
Well, and I
I
think,
know-
go ahead.
I know we're going to talk about this later in the agenda about the means of outreach, but I just following up on Dave's point about written newsletters, I really think that the website, and I actually haven't even looked at the Facebook page and the Twitter account. I mean, I personally haven't been using it, but if we have those things, so those 3 things, the website, including a modified annual report maybe, and the social media, that those could be very effective ways to reach people, I think.
well, on this
And
particular
I
one.
saw people, a lot of people do just throw those written things in the mail, unfortunately. So,
in the
I mean, in
recycling.
the recycling bin.
Well, let's go ahead and act on this action item by accepting it subject to edits received from Karen and Amy, and so that Joelle can get at it at the end of the day today and get a packet out tomorrow with Sarah. And with that, we would just need a motion and a second.
Yeah, so I would ask for a motion in a second.
I'll make the motion, but George, did you want to make a comment first?
I can comment on the next item whenever it comes up.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it was a
So I-
general comment going forward.
Okay, I move to adopt subject to edits that are forthcoming this afternoon.
Moved by Paul, second by Anderson. Still no hand showing, so I'm going to assume we'll go for a vote. Joel?
Committee Member Anderson,
yes,
Committee Member Paul,
Yes,
Chair Riley,
Yes.
and motion passes.
Okay, so we've got, and that hopefully the final pieces of this is going to show up by tonight, and you'll have it for the packet next week.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so let's go to the discussion item, and this is where I'll bring up some comments as well. So on item number 4, Dave, do you want to lead that off? Or do you
Yeah,
want questions first?
Yeah, and Stephanie, I collaborated on the exhibit, which is really the meat of this issue or this topic. I think we're at the point where we're beginning our budget cycle. And so we have to decide whether we're going to put a placeholder in for a permanent employee or a placeholder for a third party. I can tell you that we reviewed Spoke, which is a group that Amy Anderson turned us on to, and they read really well. We haven't had any interpersonal contact with them yet. We have some concerns that their team looks really, really deep. And the question is, are they really, really that deep? Or is it similar to other firms where, you know, you've got a principal or two, and then they say, hey, you're a friend of ours. Let us put your face in as one of our staffers in this area. So we don't really know if they're 7 to 8 people deep or if they're really a couple of people deep. And these are, you know, friends of the firm. They're pretty good. I noticed earlier Phil Wellman was on as a participant. I'm not sure he's still there. I'll take a look right now.
It's still on.
Yep, still on. And, you know, he represents an untried and relevant firm, but, you know, remember what the issues were before, you know, the closeness to public water now and perception. Perception carries a lot of weight. The skills, despite how good a person is, we'd have the issue of overcoming that. But I think that when you look at the depth of what's in the Exhibit 4A, we might be ready to try an in-house person again. Because even with our third-party folks, there's been so much of this stuff that's never gotten done. There's been fits and starts. I think when TBC Communications was on, we did have MailChimp. We did have the beginnings of an email list. They were much better about attending meetings to kind of get into the flow of the district and what the important issues are or were. You know, we really haven't had TMD attend a meeting, including today's public outreach meeting. So, you know, as I look at that exhibit.
Well, and we've had turnaround on people too, and that's created some,
Yeah.
you know, if there were a consistent person or, you know, that, and which is, I think goes to our recommendation to actually bring it back in-house, a consistent person who was always involved with what we're doing and had a real buy-in, that also would make a big difference.
Yep.
Can I ask a question about when you did have a person in-house, if you compare that to today's dollars, how would that compare to what we did with TMD?
It fully loaded with benefits, it would probably double it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and we do spend, you know, so we've got the retainer, and Stephanie, I don't have that number in front of me, but it's roughly
4250, I think it is.
Yeah, 4250. And occasionally there are, well, not occasionally, there's additional expenses for the media buys,
Sure.
you know, the monthly branding ads and so forth. So that won't change.
Right.
But yeah, to get the correctly talented person with benefits, you're talking double at least. And then that person would still probably shop out some
Design work and yeah.
Design and artwork and so forth. So, but again, you look at the list of all of these things, and I've included some, you know, other, you know, coordinating, grant writing, you know, basic letters of support. So, you know, we're trying to get this earmarked for fish passage for next fiscal year from, you know, 900,000. You know, I did the outreach to the Steelhead Association and the Carmel River Watershed Conservancy and so forth to get them to write letters of support. We wrote a letter of support. You know, there's easily taking those things and putting it into their hands. There are some things related to working as a public liaison where Stephanie and I go to chamber mixers. We do the government affairs committee meetings. I don't think we would give up all of those because we like representing the district. We tag team. She's done some things. I've done some things. We've both done some things. But it'd be great to bring another person in as a point of contact. Somebody from the public wants to know what's going on.
Mhm.
Contact that person. He or she can find who in the organization has the answers. So we think we can keep a person busy.
Mhm.
I think we know much more about our public outreach needs now than when we had Rachel Martinez back 10 years ago. Our reservist who got called back to Uzbekistan, the poor thing. And the only reason she joined the reserve was so she could use the facilities, the gym at Naval Postgraduate School.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
High price.
But yeah, she paid a high price. But we didn't have her doing probably half of this because we didn't at the time know we needed it. And social media was just starting.
Well, and workshops and, a lot of those things that we've taken on now.
Yeah.
Definitely, we'd definitely like to get it out of the employees that are doing it now so that they can actually concentrate on what they're supposed to be working on.
And it
Yeah.
seems to me that even if you do have, let's say if you hire an out of house entity of some sort, you're still going to have somebody, at least one person, if not a number of them, who have to provide this information.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that really is why we want to bring it in.
Yeah.
Well, and there's even just simple things, grabbing one of these off the general outreach, create/maintain a list of awards. Well, we've gotten them, we've had them, we kind of mention them as they happen in real time. And then a year goes by and, I can't even, it's like, I think we got an award for that. Well, it ought to be just straightforward. Somebody somewhere should have it, and it's just every time we have an article, there was a nice piece that was written by Stanford folks that highlighted the collaboration on Pure Water Monterey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that should be somewhere that is accessible and we always know, where to find it. We don't have that right now. There was a group associated with the water reuse conference a year ago who was charged with the task of actually developing a document related to our panel. And so Pure Water Monterey was on that. And it was, again, about collaboration and the number of parties. And they wrote it. And it came out, I don't know, 2 months ago, almost a year after the conference. But we should have that available and we should have a link to it. And these are just things that slip through the cracks. And when it's somebody's job and you want it clean and, it's their responsibility for knowing exactly where to go to find those things.
Yeah, I want to go down a slightly different road for a little bit for a discussion. But what's the status of the existing contract we have with TMD?
Yeah, we can cancel it any time with notice. And it only runs through June 30th anyway. And we've been hesitant to just drop them because we've needed to continue to place our branding ads.
And workshop ads. Yeah.
And workshop ads. And we're in workshop season right now.
Okay, well, let me just tell you a little bit where I'm going. I looked at your 4A, the attachment and the list, and it looked like an organizational interest in reporting mechanics. I'm gonna use some maybe not the right words here, or maybe it's not even it's not good salesmanship on what I'm trying to say. But it seems to me what's really missing is that it's not the annual report, because the annual report consolidates a lot of things and it's in one reading, and a little bit like Karen said, it's too much at one time. And maybe what I'm concerned about is that the timeliness of the stuff that could be issued to the public could be where we market our image. And it's not so much having a complete report sometime or 2 reports, semi-annual reports. It's not so much documenting everything, even like the awards and so on. It's using the moment when it's newsworthy to try to get something out. And it seems to me the way you get the public kind of on your side is they see things periodically, but frequent enough that it's in their minds because of an event, not because of a summary of what's happened over the last quarter or 6 months or something like that. So I would like, and maybe we're going to have to discuss this some more before we go down this road, but I'm more concerned about marketing to the public, what we do when it's timely. And so when we file something against the PUC, that ought to be a news release of some kind to point out what the issues we're talking about and what we're defending on behalf of the community or representing on behalf of the community.
And that's on the document, George, under press relations, regular press releases. That's where you can do that.
Yeah, and I want to echo that. I think we share the philosophy. We'd rather the gatekeeper be the recipient of our releases and they can choose not to run a story rather than us not getting the message to the outlet. And that's pretty much where we've been, is unless it's something specific and we're going to, and it's swirling out there and a guest opinion from us would matter, then we'll sit down and write a guest opinion. But press releases, I mean, shoot, if you open up Aqua News and you see so-and-so has been named chairman of the Eastern Municipal Water District Board, do we really care? But they need to fill a page.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Aqua does. Well, at a minimum, when we've got newly elected directors, the day after the election, we should have a press release going, new directors elected to the district, and send it off to Aqua, send it to CSDA. And if they fill 2 column inches with that information, great. And if they choose not to, so be it. But we're so behind that we don't even do those simple things. And then, you know, I think George elevated a little bit that there are even more important issues going on that we might as well be recognized for being involved with. And, you know, when an application is filed, so we're going to get to the next topic, but, you know, I'm holding one of the monthly branding ads for the day we get approval for the water purchase agreement. That month is going to have to focus on successfully getting the water purchase agreement, which means we're green lighted to do the expansion. Because you got these people like John Tilley sitting there going, you're distracted by Measure J, you're not focused on water supply. It's like, well, why are we in an application in front of the PUC? If we didn't have the PUC, we'd actually be done with that by now. We'd have built the thing, but we're going through the motions, but we're doing it. It absorbs our attention and we're spending a lot of quality time on it, but the messages were distracted, you know, so.
Yeah,
I
Karen?
completely agree that it's important to keep in the public eye, to make sure people know that we are working on the water supply, you know, in very tangible ways. So whenever there's something newsworthy, you know, I completely agree. And I completely agree with what George said about when something newsworthy happens, perfect time to reach out and let people know. And so I totally support, you know, for us trying to go in that direction. And I've even tried to do it a little bit on a small scale by writing this column in the Pacific Grove Press, this new publication. For various reasons, that has its limits, but you know, what about you mentioned, Dave, a guest opinion piece, and you know, what about, and you write it from time to time, right? You write one in if we could do that in the Monterey County Weekly, and sometimes it could be from me, I'm happy to. I think at this point, I'd rather write it for the Monterey County Weekly because it reaches a larger audience. And but I'll tell you, the feedback I've gotten from the public on the little PG paper columns, that people really, I mean, they really like it. They really like having the information.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard that too.
Well, and I think that Dennis L. Taylor, he's been doing a lot of writing, and he gets, he gets kind of front page on the articles about the water district. And he's a good writer. He's been doing it anytime anything happens.
Who?
Dennis Taylor, Dennis L.
Yeah,
Taylor.
yeah.
He does a
yeah.
good job.
Right, and he writes across the issue when there's controversy.
Yeah,
I think we need to think a little bit about press releases that acknowledge a movement that we are taking. It may not be newsworthy in a larger context, but it's an update on some steps we're taking on behalf of the community.
Yeah.
And this is worth promoting.
and
I want to back up a little bit, Dave, and I don't know how much longer we want to spend on some of these topics. But if we have a branding mission or a branding image, is that, I'm not sure what that is anymore, and I'm not sure if I would recognize it if I saw it, because I'm not an ad man, so I'm kind of trying to figure out what is the branding. Is it something to be revisited in any way?
Yeah, well, and we're going to see a little bit of that in the next agenda item, but traditionally what we've tried to do is, we have 12 opportunities a year, and we try to focus on the three things that are our primary mission, which is water supply. And so you may have seen, we did an ad when they put in the Monterey Pipeline Bridge right there on Highway 68. We congratulated Cal-Am for their success in doing so. Well, that was also the same time that we were beginning to start the Measure J process of taking them over and trying to question whether a desal project was needed. So we were recognizing a good, something important, but also putting ourselves in front of it. So we try to do water supply, 3 times a year to remind people we're doing water supply, that we're out there. Pure Water Monterey, when we first did deliveries, we ran that ad. But then the fish, environmental stewardship, we try to do that a couple times a year, depending on whether it's a dry year, wet year, and what the message is. But I think the last one, not the last one, but the one before that was all about the fish. And then we try to hit the conservation messages. And unfortunately, and I know Stephanie's on it, she's our conservation person, but unfortunately, there's often more to say about that than the other things. And I don't want to get bogged down as just the conservation people. So, we do run the separate workshop ads, which is good, but we end up doing conservation messaging right around the beginning of summer, because things are going to get hot, and we remind people about water waste towards the end of summer when it's time to shut down your sprinkler system. And then Car Week. And Car Week is more of a, welcome to the Monterey Peninsula, please skip a shower if you can type of message.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm not trying to expose anything here, but how much, because I know a lot of the ads are co-sponsored, co-paid for by Cal-Am because it's jointly issued.
The workshop
is
ad.
that a little different than some of the other branding ads that put in? Because what I see generally is that it's supported by both entities.
Yeah, the branding ad, which generally we try to have the water matters as kind of the headline on it. And that is just a general once a month hit on the various different topics Dave mentioned. Our workshops are generally co-sponsored with Cal-Am. And so we will have both of our logos on our conservation stuff. We do our events and public outreach events and that kind of thing as partners with Cal-Am because our goal is conservation. So
and the branding ads created a bit of a kerfuffle with Cal-Am because at first they questioned, why isn't our logo there? And we had to say, well, because it's not a conservation ad, it's a district branding ad. Well, why are you doing that? Well, for obvious reasons that, we don't need to get too detailed on, but we needed our own identity because of a lot of things going on out there with votes and initiatives and misunderstanding of what the district does and so forth. And so we've now embraced it. It's pretty low cost to try to keep ourselves just in the public vision. You know, they don't have to read carefully, but if they see the logo and they see that there's an ad and that's all the takeaway is, then that's good. You've made an imprint that the district's out there and promoting something. Can't remember the message, but I knew it was a district. And that's why that's out there, which is we are independent. We do, what do you got?
Well, I was going to show, this is a brand. And you see, it's like we have, when you look at the, even for a second, you look in the paper, eventually people are going to say, oh, that's the water district. It's a visual cue, and people recognize it. And it's important to do that so that people do recognize it, and they'll start, oh, I'm interested in water, instead of just, you know, there's lots of ads in the paper, but if they have consistency, that is a brand for your organization and for what you do. And that's really, they all do look, you know, they're consistent.
Yeah, and what we found was for years we had a certain style, and we had the title Water Matters, which was also the title of our newsletter, because it means two things. It means that water matters, and these are water matters. Read about them.
That's good.
And so the combination of our logo, Water Matters, and the consistent style, changing photograph, changing message, was exactly what you're talking about, Amy, where people could just kind of go by it and go, oh, that was the district. The district's in my life. You know, the district might actually be capable of running the water system. You know, they're independent. They have different things they do. So, and I think TMD got a little bit away from that. They wanted to put their own imprint on the style of the ad, which wasn't bad. We kind of liked the style, but they strayed away from the Water Matters, and then the ad style varied from month to month a little bit, and so it was moving away from that easily recognizable issue. But I guess, you know, not to belabor this issue at this point, the reason we're coming to you at this meeting is to, I guess, maybe get your tacit approval that for now, go ahead and budget as a full-time position, continue to investigate third-party entities that are out there, because I would like to do a little bit more research and actually talk to the folks at, Amy, I just
Spoke.
Yeah, Spoke.
You've got some big
As
brands.
well as some others that are out there again, but and then, you know, we'll come back with it. We don't have to make the decision to actually hit that today, but I think it's important to start, you know, looking at this. And just as George has said, you know, some of it's the mechanics of how you do outreach, but that's the biggest issue. Is we need somebody, and we need somebody who's invested in it like they're a member of the district. And so, you know, TVC Communications really was. TMD hasn't demonstrated it. I think there are others out there that would be very invested, so we could use a third party. I'm just not sure we'll get all of these bullets done with a third party. When you make it somebody's job as an employee, then there's a higher likelihood that everything will get touched on. But
well, and Dave, I would like to see an opportunity for not a new person would bring new thinking. That's one thing. But maybe a hybrid approach. I mean, whatever you need to budget just for a holding line item, we might find that there's a staff person who's needed for a lot of the follow-up and the routine and so on. But having a outside input process and so on, you may get more creative ideas. You may be able to energize certain kinds of issues a little more. And anyway, I just like that to be an open possibility as well. Anyway, that's what I'd like to see. The reason why I'm as kind of focused on this is I think there's a lot of newsy things that the district has been doing, and we're not a full-fledged water company. We are an emerging water company, and that's just my phrasing. But I do think that we are trying to show the public we are moving in the direction that the public said they want us to go. And how can we show those steps? And how do we keep the district's name in front of the public to show that we're making steps? And it's not the fish rescue necessarily. Periodically it's going to be, but the newsiness is going to be, what are the steps that are being taken by the district that is trying to serve the community? And I mean, I love the fact that we're the ICRMPDA or whatever it is, the planning agency. I love the fact that we're that. And I think we ought to be promoting that a little bit more, because it shows, and and having responsibility for the entire watershed. There are conceptual things here that the district does that serves much wider community of interests than just the water supply or just the regulating, take. And I just think those kind of things ought to be in the mix somewhere. Anyway.
And just to let you guys know, Stephanie and I both have to hop on a call at 2:45, so about 20 minutes from now.
Okay.
So not to belabor it, but I think that this exhibit, we've distilled down to what we, our wish list of things we need. And for now, as you said, we're just trying to get a placeholder for our budgeting process, and we'll continue to evolve this a little bit. But I completely agree with the discussion. And I always come back to an opportunity missed during the Carmel fire, the one up the valley, the last one, where once we told Cal Fire that they could use our water and that we had a standpipe, a hydrant-sized standpipe pulling water from the river, it was, they protected our fish facility and we protected them. It was a perfect little human interest story after the fact, where it would have been nice to get out there that we've got this facility, it got protected by Cal Fire. We thank Cal Fire, but they got the benefit of our water that wouldn't have been available if not for the fact that we have this facility and that we work together to notify them. I mean, it was one of those opportunities to say, all for one for all, we pitched in and we didn't get that chance. We just, simple things like that could have, they're small. They would have been short-lived. The news cycle would have forgotten it a week later, but just one chance to, make a touch. And we need somebody who's thinking that way all the time.
I agree.
I do too. I mean, I think the theme of benefiting the public, doing things that benefit the entire community, the entire public, could be a theme that cuts across a lot of different activities.
Yeah.
But we can keep it we can put it out there that we do things for the benefit of the public, to benefit the public specifically. That's our mission,
And also that we have this incredible capacity. I don't think people understand, it's huge. The numbers of things, it's absolutely huge. And I think people don't know that. Well, what do? I hear that sometimes. I think, is that an hour? Anyway.
In terms of the local outreach, I just wanted to mention one thing is I know that you, Dave Stolt, you have talked to a lot of different groups at various times. I don't know who else at the district has, but I feel like we should consider making reaching out to Big Ag, to the tourist industry, the Rotary clubs, the people at Big Ag and tourism to start, to those people who it's possible to have a dialogue with, to sit down, do a lot of listening, do some explaining, try to have a dialogue about finding common ground and things that can benefit them as well as, are trying to get enough water to our people in our district. So I have, somebody's made some suggestions to me about specific people. And so we don't have to get into a lot of detail now, but do you agree that that is worth trying and putting some effort into?
Oh, yeah, and you should be assured that we've been doing that. We didn't do that, as it turns out, prior to my arrival. I was shocked that we didn't have a relationship with the chambers of commerce and with the hospitality association and so forth. And so we actually developed a strategy to be at, so everyone you see under local outreach, the chambers, we go to chamber events, MCAR, we actually, it's been less so with their current government affairs officer, but every year we would come to a presentation on our rules to the realtors. MCHA, we've gone so far as to, I've put on a tux and gone to their annual gala to have a presence.
Oh, and we're members also.
Yeah, and we're members, and then we created a budget to basically go to their golf tournament every year, and we put together a golf team and
Sponsor a hole and
sponsor
have a
a
table
hole.
and
We've had our table, so
You've
we're
done
playing
it.
golf, and then we send one of our water demand division staff members out to sit under a canopy with a table full of shower heads and goodies as the golfers come through. And so we do quite a bit of that, and we've always made ourselves available for the government affairs committee meetings of each of those organizations. But we'd like to continue to do more of it. It dropped off during COVID because just it dropped off, but that's always on our radar, except for the big ag. And we do need to reach big ag better because their cohort has now forged a relationship with the business coalition here locally. You saw that letter.
Mm-hmm.
And California American has been meeting with their water solutions group in the Salinas Valley. And so we're probably not doing enough in that area. We do need to reach.
Could Mary Adams help, you think? 'Cause she might know people in that world from her work at United Way?
Yeah, and we know them though too, because so like in conjunction with Monterey One Water, the Buns, I went out to, back when Rick Antle was still with us, to view the workforce housing with Rick and his one of his attorneys, and then we talked about the Spreckles ponds and wastewater, and all of it kind of goes together. We know the consultants, Dennis Seitz, we know almost all those folks. We just haven't spent the requisite amount of time with them. So we're still kind of, whereas Monterey One Water serves Salinas and they've got a little bit stronger relationship, we're still, those folks on the peninsula.
Yeah. I'm going to be aware of the time. I'm trying to get to the last item. Dave, do you need a motion on this, or do you have enough guidance?
No, it's just discussion, and we're just trying to apprise you that we're still going to struggle for the next 2 to 3 months. We'll get branding ads done. When needed, we will get some press release or guest opinion opportunities. But until we solve this issue, either with a new committed third-party firm or an employee, we're just going to kind of, bumble by.
Okay, but you're gonna put a placeholder in for budget planning purposes.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention that I went through this list on Exhibit 4 and all the categories. I did not see IRWMP. Maybe I missed it. But anyway.
No, your point's a good one. We've never looked at that as an outreach opportunity. It's more of a planning opportunity, but why not? Like our last go round, we coordinated and then we put money into the hands of others, not ourselves. And so there's another example of us sucking it up and doing something on behalf of others that we didn't get any positive press out of.
That's why the district is in a good position, I think, is because it does things like that. Let's jump to the last item, and we'll just go for comments because this is near-term messaging.
Yeah, and mostly it's And, you know, as I've said, I've already reserved whatever month we get approval on the WPA, that'll be a water supply month. And we'll find a way to recognize the pure water expansions moving forward. But I didn't know if there are other themes that you've been thinking about lately. We didn't lay out the whole year for 2022 the way we did for 2021. And we didn't hit on all of these. You know, for example, July of 2021, if it was a dry year, we were going to do water waste. If it wasn't, we were going to focus on transparency. Well, it was a dry year, so we did water waste. This year is also going to be a dry year, but mostly it was, since you three are thinking about how we're perceived outside, are there certain thematic topics that you are thinking about that maybe we've missed that we can kind of slip into the monthly branding ads?
The only thing I would say, just excuse me, Amy, but the only thing I would say specifically is that when we file a lawsuit or a response to a lawsuit or something, I think that's kind of newsworthy in terms of letting the public know that we're fighting for certain, you know, district-wide, peninsula-wide, watershed-wide issues. And I think that's kind of the nature of what I think we need to do a little more of. Amy?
Yeah, the only thing that that struck me was that aqua meeting that I went to and Karen went to recently. And I thought that John Laird had a really good point, is to maybe consider using the word water efficiency instead of conservation, which gets people a little upset. I'm going to be asked to conserve more. That water efficiency is really what it's about. It's the same thing, but it's more kind of an ongoing thing, like, oh, all of a sudden we have to conserve. At some point, I think that might be a useful way to, something useful to transition to. I don't know when, but you know, just as a general way to think, there might be goals that are conservation goals, but we're talking about water efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great idea, Amy. And it's a question of bringing a different brain to the table, a different thought process, a different perspective. And that's where some of these ideas come from, or the language comes from, or a new kind of emphasis. I hope our committee can do a little bit of this. Not that we're experts and so on, but we do come from different, you know, points of view.
Well, we can thank Laird for that one.
Well,
I liked it.
and I think you're cross-fertilizing on the drought outreach as well. You know, how do we, you know, what do we say? And I think that term of art, you know, water efficiency is going to come into play there. I do want to let you know that we do plan on doing some drought outreach, probably either in conjunction with, jointly with CalAm, or at least with having discussed it with them. The problem is we are less affected by the current situation in the state of California than the Valley is and others who rely on surface water reservoirs. And I know I've mentioned this before. So I think what we're going to try to do is get all the way through April, because it could rain again and we really don't know for sure where we're at. And then do some messaging on voluntary conservation or focus on water efficiency at home.
Mhm.
2 or 3 different themes, you know, water waste enforcement and so forth. And we will be doing mailers at the time you asked about, like the, you know, the tabletop tents that talk about
Hospitality and restaurants.
Yeah, water is precious on California's Central Coast. You know, you've seen that.
Well, also thinking ahead, Dave, I mean, what you have thought ahead, or the district has thought ahead about storing water, you know, the drought reserve and operating reserve. These are thinking ahead and allows the district to be in a little better situation than others because of thinking ahead, and that's worth doing. In some ways, you know, I'm so irritated at CalAm over the years for having nothing to show for 40 years of ownership and 40 years of trying. if they're
Well,
trying much at all. And I'm not saying we write about that. I'm just,
no, you would have loved being a fly on the wall with conversations we've been having really for the last 3 or 4 weeks. They're one well short, and they've grown too accustomed to relying on our ASR well, which was built for a different purpose than being a production well year round. And now we're telling them they can't have it because of travel times in the Pure Water Monterey well field and so forth. And they're like, what do we do? What do we do? We may have to violate the CDO. And our message is the water's there, you just can't get it out. Whose fault is that? And, unfortunately, it's kind of their fault. And so the issue that we're going to see is going to be, things are tight. Well, they may be tight, but they may be tighter because of a different reason. And, how you say that and how you articulate it and how you maybe don't say it, we're very concerned. But in all our conversations, there's been a little bit of a, if we have to tell the public that we're going to ration because we can't get all the water out of the ground, it's like, first of all, it shouldn't go to rationing first. Second of all, the water's there. How do you tell the public that you have the water, but you can't serve them? So there's some brewing issues that you should be aware of, that this is not going to be an easy messaging if, all the water's there.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about those other issues and how we address these complicated ones. But one thing we'll certainly want to emphasize at times is that this ASR is a drought resilience. There's a lot of talk about developing drought resiliency. Well, this is one way, as you pointed out, George, this was started a long time ago, and it's a good thing. Now we need to do more of that.
and I haven't forgotten the fact that the CDO is issued against Cal-Am for their non-performance. And it's easy for the public to kind of think, well, the district's part of the problem. Well, we're trying to solve the problem. We do have limitations on what we can do because of the CDO, and we're fighting to undo the Section 2 item, and Cal-Am just doesn't support us. So as we try to find ways to make the community work better, Cal-Am is not on our side. So, and that's hard. You can't put that message out there very well.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't finish earlier. So to your point, we've got 1,361 acre feet in reserve that will help in the drought, but we might not be able to get it out of the ground. Yeah.
We need to hop off.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, those are things that will be coming. And I guess because this is a discussion item, if you think of something that you'd either like to see in a monthly branding ad, a topic, just let us know, and we'll kind of shuffle what we're doing. Because otherwise, what we've found ourselves doing quite a bit right now is just recycling ads from the same time period, either last year or the year before.
Yeah, because the situation is basically the same as what you're saying. And that's, it's hard to be creative when nothing changes.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes it meets the need perfectly well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys are busy.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. This is not an action item either. And so unless there's any final comments by anybody?
I've got a final comment. Good luck next week, Dave.
Nah, thanks.
Yes.
Thinking about you.
Yeah, I was talking to Karen a little bit about it this morning, and it doesn't stop other people from going, hey, can we schedule a meeting for Friday the 22nd or whatever it is, 23rd? And I'm like, okay, there's got to be a limit, but we'll see.
I wanted to end on the same note, but I appreciate Amy. And anyway, this has been a good discussion. I hope we'll keep developing ideas as we go forward.
Yeah, key thing on the drought, when you hear from your neighbors, how come I'm not hearing anything on the drought? Tell them, rest assured that with the close of rainy season, we will be messaging on drought. But drought affects the Central Coast differently than it does the Central Valley. And Sacramento responds to what's going on in the Central Valley and the Sierra Snowpack. And, you know, just try to keep people calm because, you know, as I've said before, when you've got 28,000 acre feet in the ground, but your legal limit is 3,376 acre feet, that's not a drought problem. That's a regulatory problem. The water is there, you just can't, you're not legally allowed to go get it. So our problems are a little different than looking at, you know, San Antonio or Nacimiento,
Yeah.
and they're at 10% or 20% capacity. So.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
That's helpful. Will
All right.
do.
Gonna
Thank
go
you.
around.
But Joelle, can you stay on just a minute after
Yes,
this?
I could stay on.
Okay, and for everybody else, the committee meeting is adjourned, and good luck, Dave.